Fintan O'Toole, when we were texting to set up this particular episode of Club Talk Football, you just said maybe it was just me, but it felt like a mental weekend. An awful lot did happen, but what comes to mind for you when you're thinking of that mental weekend of Gaelic football, and to be honest, hurling as well?
Yeah, I suppose I'm kind of referring to the two of them. It just felt like there was a lot of, like, your three of your biggest traditional counties, Kilkenny hurling, Kerry football, Dublin football, all having their county finals. Just felt like there was a lot going on in Cork and Clare. I think it just felt like it was a bigger weekend maybe than last weekend. Probably the biggest weekend of the club calendar, because a lot of counties seem to have kind of, this end of September is the kind of cut-off date, and their kind of focus is now switching from club to the kind of inter-county scene. There's only kind of a few still left that are kind of spilling it over into October. So I think this always kind of felt like it was going to be kind of a landmark weekend, and you just had kind of so many big names as well doing stuff, whether it was like all the Dublin lads getting the medal with Ballymun again, David Clifford and Kerry, Ballyhale's kind of brilliance once again on show in Nolan Park, Davy and Clare. All the big names that you're kind of used to seeing, and they all seem to be kind of there involved in the big storylines of the business end around the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to agree with you there. The Dublin final, anyway, the way Ballymun pulled Ballyboden apart throughout that game and won by 14 points, and the final score was 119 to 8 points. It was four points apiece early on, and I thought to myself, geez, we've a rip-roaring game here. This is going to go all the way to the wire. Ballymun ended up scoring 10 in a row to lead by 10 points to 4, and they might have even boasted a little bit more just after half-time. But it ended up being an annihilation. How much do you think of this is down to Ballymun finally having those 6 county players available and not jaded after a Dublin season? I mean, it almost feels cliche to bring it up, but do you think that is a huge part of it?
Absolutely. Well, I don't think it is a cliche. I mean, I think we said at the start of the club championship this year, the way it was going, that there was going to be some big examples of stuff at play, whether it was like player availability through, guys not going to America, maybe kind of injuries being a factor, clear enough for some teams, or the county thing. And I think Ballymun are probably the biggest example of that, because, I know you kind of touched on this before, I think last week in kind of a preview, but they're not one of the super clubs, so they don't have a massive reservoir of players that when the 5 or 6 guys are away with Dublin, that they can still be very competitive in the Division 1 of the league in Dublin, which is obviously taken very seriously, maybe in the way that Ballyboden can. And trying to integrate those guys again in a kind of a blitz-like format, the way the Dublin Championship has been run off a bit, especially years when they might have got to an All-Ireland final replay, it has to be really, really difficult for them. And it's not like they've been a million miles off it. There's been kind of small margins, but I think that is the small margin. And I think you saw it yesterday, like the quality of their teamwork and the interplay in the attack. I mean, I think they got about 3 or 4 points with what looked like almost the same move, that they would work the ball almost to the end line in the left corner, pop it back to someone, Dean Rock a couple of times, Fiach Andrews on another couple of occasions, and they would swing it over from the D to the 20-yard line. And that just looked to me like the team, they're really in sync with each other, they really knew what they were doing, and that have been playing regularly together.
Yeah.
And it's a really impressive county title when you've beaten the last 2 champions in both the semi-final and the final. Probably done it in different ways, they kind of maybe had to dig in a bit more against Kilmacud. I saw Brendan Hackett actually had an interesting point after that. He said, in a county final, it's either a ding-dong battle he kind of finds, or else one team, for whatever reason, just absolutely hits full speed. And he kind of said, I don't think any of our players dipped below maybe 8 out of 10 today. And I mean, I think that shows. I mean, like that Ballyboden team, in January they were maybe quite unlucky not to get to an All-Ireland final against Kilcoo. I know they had a couple of injuries, but they were still back in the final. Some of them obviously lost their hurling last week, but obviously there's a lot of talent on that side. But like that second quarter, they were just absolutely blown away, and it ended up being probably far more comfortable than I'd say Ballymun would have ever envisaged. They were able to they did such a big lead to protect then in the second half.
What a spine to that Ballymun team! Like Evan Comerford, Dublin sub goalie, and heir apparent to Stephen Cluxton in goals. Owen Dolan's been there full back for years. He's always very solid. Philly McMahon in and around him, even though he probably didn't have a massive standout game, but of course the Ballyboden forwards were kept to 8 points in total, so obviously no issues there. Centre back Paddy Small, midfield James McCarthy, ridiculous. Dylan Keaton comes in centre forward for Davy Byrne, does quite well, and obviously Dean Rock and Paddy Small on the inside forward line as well. It's somewhere between a club and a county team, and I know they haven't won the club for 8 years before this, but my God, the potential that's there is huge, and obviously you'd love to see them in an All-Ireland club competition. I'd love to have seen them against Corofin, but of course Corofin are gone, and we'll come back to that again. But the power of that Ballymun team, unreal. And do you know what? I think Ballyboden were a little bit fortunate before half time. Like Darren O'Reilly probably could have gone for like pulling a man down. That probably should have been a black card. And I think Michael Darragh Macaulay, was he lucky to get away with a red card because he caught Paddy Small, who did stumble a small bit and fall into his shoulder, but a lot of lads get sent off for that sort of thing. So Ballyboden could have been worse for them.
Yeah, it could have been. I mean, like, your 10 points down was bad enough, but they could have maybe lost a couple of men as well. That decision could have gone against them. But like, go back to your point. I mean, is it the best spine of a club team in the country when you have so many kind of guys from the All-Ireland winning team that are dominated straight up the middle?
Yeah.
And the thing about as well, that it looks to me that there's a lot of them still there from, say, the 12 team that won, but it seems that they've just added a bit to it in attack. Like Paddy Small, like, in the semi-final, I thought he was absolutely outstanding. Like his footwork is just unbelievable, the way he kind of engineers space. And
you remember that one where he danced between the two Kilmacud Crokes lads to burst free?
Amazing. And it kind of shows, look, the embarrassment of riches that Dublin have in attack when you think of him, trying to get into that forward line for Dessie Farrell's team. But it seems to me that, like, it's not just all about rock up front, because you have him. Fiach Andrews had a very good game yesterday. Dylan Keating comes in, so they clearly, they've taken it on to another level again. I mean, I think a good few of those are from the second Paddy Christie team. I think they won the Féile maybe around a decade ago, and I think Keating, Andrews, I think Leon Young as well. There's a couple more, I think, that they've come in. So you still have a lot of guys there that had that disappointment against Bridget's in the 13 final. But they've been kind of bolstered now with kind of the second wave that have come on to join them. But on the thing about the club championship thing, like Brendan Hackett, I saw spoke about it afterwards. I know the 6 Mile Bridge manager, Tim Crowe, was as well talking about it yesterday. I don't think this is going to go away. I know the GA tried to maybe quash it last week, but for Club like Ballymun, like, they've talked a lot, those players, about the 2013 defeat and the disappointment of it, and they wanted another crack at it. Like, it's taken them this long to even just get another go at possibly a Leinster championship. So it will be interesting to see, I suppose, what state maybe Ireland is in, first of all, come January, whether there's a movement or an appetite. I mean, no one's really pushing for it to be kind of rattled off in the next couple of weeks before October, but I don't think it's going to go away. And I think next January or February, I'd say, if you offer those Ballymun players the chance, you want to go down to Newbridge or Tullamore on the second Sunday and play the Leinster quarter-final, I'd imagine they're going to jump at it, because they've waited for this for so long. And probably just the one small little bit of a regret, isn't it, that when they finally did get back on top in Dublin, that there is a full stop to it.
Yeah, I've interviewed James McCarthy a few times and asked him about that, and it is definitely something they regret. But actually, I wonder, I mean, if it's true that over the last number of years that their players are battered and bruised and carrying an injury when they go into the Dublin Championship, and maybe that's why they've come up short, if they go from playing a county championship here, and there's probably 1 or 2 lads carrying injuries in clubs across the country that are going to go and play inter-county now, if those Ballymun lads, a little bit tired after that, go and play an inter-county with Dublin, possibly get all the way to an All-Ireland final and win it, and then have to turn around and play a provincial and possibly All-Ireland series as well, they could be one of these teams that are ripe for the plucking in terms of a shock at that particular stage. But at the same time, it's 50 years of All-Ireland Club Championship. I said this to Michael Verney in the Hurling podcast. It's 50 years of All-Ireland Club. Assuming that the cases don't go out of control and that, like, death rates shoot up, I mean, it's going to be very hard to justify not playing it, I feel.
Yeah, well, I thought the example that Tim Crowe gave, I don't know, did you read that comment? Like, I think, he has a bit of an athletics background, and he talked about 137 years of history in the national championships and that they just adapted to it. So I don't think it's going to go away. I think the more county champions we get, and especially the bigger clubs, there's so many of them in hurling especially that have been kind of used to, winning counties, and that they're you know yourself, like, the ambitions just get pushed higher and you're no longer satisfied kind of with your lot and maybe in your local championship. Yeah, I get what you're saying. That will be a concern for Ballymun if their Dublin players are playing right up until Christmas. But I think they waited so long for this. I think if you said to James McCarthy, if Dublin ended up playing in All Ireland on the 19th of December, but you have to be ready on the 4th, 5th of January, I think you do it, because I think they know that this chance may not come along again, because they definitely were a classic example, I'd say, of a team in 13 after losing the Bridges for thinking, look, we'll learn from this experience and we'll be back again. But it's just taken them so long to try and get back there, which just shows how how difficult the Championship Dublin is to win and to get out of.
I want to have a quick word about the Tipperary football final that was on at the weekend. Number one, because it's devastation 2 weeks in a row for Loughmore-Castleiney, same as it is of course for Ballymun St Enda's in Dublin. They've lost both hurling and football. But I don't know if you saw the video last week, Noel McGrath just absolutely crestfallen after losing to Killidangan. And then this week, of course, he's in bits once more. There's a photograph doing the rounds after Clonmel late on win the game. And I think Clonmel were in a good position to kick on and win this handily enough at one stage. But Loughmore, whatever it is that's in them, the bit of metal that's in there, they came back, nearly did it. But Michael Quinlivan, what a goal.
Yeah, well, there's a few things to kind of to get at there. Like, I mean, first of all, Noel McGrath's kind of devastation. I was walking across the pitch after the hurling final. We were going doing a few interviews with Killidangan players and just past the Loughmore group, and like they looked absolutely broken. You know, as you would, like the way to lose the hurling final in that fashion. But to pick it up, and I mean, you know, if they lost by maybe 10 or 15 points yesterday, you would have said, look, obviously very, very difficult but to kind of come back from like 6 points down at half time to actually go ahead in the finale, I just think, you know, it's just so disappointing for them. And I mean, look, they're going to get all the plaudits and everyone widely admires them, like, you know, but for them, I mean, like, football isn't just an afterthought. I mean, they've won 3 counties in the last, I think, since 2013. So, you know, it's something that they every year would be a title that they'd be targeting, and they have a big old history with Clonmel. They've probably been the 2 dominant sides really over the last decade. Maybe Moylough Rovers have picked up 1 or 2 in that time frame. But when they were undone, like, it took something special, and, you know, Quinlivan, and again, like, this goes back to, I mean, we talked about Ballymun, the way this year has changed, that those players are available to them. I mean, all in all, Michael Quinlivan wasn't meant to be around this year. You know, he was gone away, he was gone travelling, he'd written off pretty much 2020. He then comes back, he's back in with the tip panel, I think, for the October start of the Munster Championship, and then makes his mark at a time when you really, really need him. And I know they always have this kind of quandary in Clonmel, bit like maybe the Aidan O'Shea thing in Brafey, where do you play him, full forward or midfield? But he comes out and gets the ball and probably does what you kind of dreamed that he'd be able to achieve for you, in kind of running through the heart of the Loughmore defence and scoring a great goal. In fairness, Loughmore came back to level it. I think it was Jack Kennedy scored the winning point, but that's a great one for Clonmel in terms of, I think it's the first time they've done back-to-back in 30 years. And I would imagine they'd be another side, like they lost the Munster Club final last December. I'd say they would love to have a shot at a provincial championship and try and get back there. I won it a couple of years ago.
Has it ever struck you about how quickly Michael Quinlivan covers the ground and just glides past players? But not only that, he has this trick that some of the best footballers out there do, that when they're 4 or 5 steps taken, they put their hand up as if they're about to bounce the ball, but they take another 3 or 4 steps before they actually do it. So he's very, very clever doing that. Very hard player to keep into. A point I meant to make to you when we were talking about the Dublin Championship a minute ago relates to Dean Rock and Barney Rock. So obviously both brilliant free takers, both have won plenty over their careers. And Dean had a photograph up afterwards of the two of them holding a cup. And, you know, free taking included and all that kind of stuff. But have we ever seen a father and son combo to rival it? Are there many that kind of come to mind when you think of that? Now, I'm putting you on the spot, but so I'll read out a couple. So those that have won, I think, All-Stars over the years. So you've got the Brogans, and then obviously Alan and Bernard Brogan, Martin McHugh, and then his sons Mark and Ryan. You have the Dermot Early and Dermot Early Jr., Liam O'Neill and Kevin O'Neill of Galway and Mayo respectively, Frank and Brian McGuigan, Tim Kennelly and Ty Keneally, Ogie Moore and David Moore. So there are plenty over the years, but they're like Dean and Barney Rock. That's quite a father and son combo, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose the free taking thing, I mean, I don't remember, I didn't see Barney Rock play, but I mean, like, everyone talks about it, you kind of read stories about it. Obviously you'll be more familiar with Dean's play, but like, Dean's story is just really interesting in how he's risen to become indispensable to Dublin, really. I mean, I was reading the Bernard Brogan's autobiography, and, like, you know, he talks about the way his role in the team had kind of changed, that basically Dean Rock was brought in post 2014. He was a better free taker than me, and he was nailed on in the team. But then, in fairness, he's become much more than just a free taker. I think his all-round game has become absolutely superb.
That didn't happen overnight, though. Like, there was a couple of years, and it wasn't probably until the 2016 replayed All-Ireland against Mayo that I really thought, okay, now he really is a serious top-level forward.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's definitely over the last couple of years, and he's definitely kind of worked on it. But even like something as simple as his penalty yesterday, compared to the one in the semi-final, like, I mean, okay, I know the game was won, but like, he absolutely emphatically put it away. So yeah, I think they definitely have to be up there. I mean, the other examples you mentioned, so Brian McGuigan and Frank McGuigan, Brian's career at times was kind of a bit cursed by injury, but he obviously did it on various occasions. Like Wayne McHugh was probably a different type of player to the way his father was. But in terms of kind of the similarities and kind of styles of play, yeah, they'd have to be right up there.
Yeah.
And the fact that he continues to have success, I mean, that must be a great boost for him now heading into a championship.
So the Kerry Football Championship over the weekend, East Kerry soft, Mid Kerry 215 to 9 points, fairly comprehensive. In your estimation, is it unfair seeing these divisional teams in the final, or do you just say, look, let's just enjoy watching David Clifford hit 1-4 and burst the ball into the top corner from about 16 yards out?
No, I don't think it's unfair division teams being in the final, because I suppose maybe being from Cork, I'm kind of familiar with the traditional aspect of it and how it's it's a big part of Cork GA, it's a big part of Kerry football for years, and it is a great outlet. I mean, David Clifford's club, Dr. Cokes at a big senior club nearby in Killarney, like Fussett probably aren't really going to get up to that level of senior, you would think, so it gives him a chance to play in the County Senior Championship. Like, the big issue for Kerry, and this has been touched on last year by the Secretary of the County Convention, is what's happening off the pitch and population trends, and just basically the movement of people, that the east of the county is just basically becoming the base really for a lot of people, and that's reflected then in the resources available to the GA clubs. Like, I think they did 5 in a row in the County Minor Championship this year. They won a good few under 21s. The numbers available to St. Brendan's in Killarney for the school's football, in comparison to say Closh and Skellige in South Kerry, has dipped a good bit from where it would have been before. So this is all a factor, and then it's just the number of clubs available to them. Because Kerry went back down to 8 clubs, I mean, you win a county title last year as they did, and they were very impressive in doing so. And then because Rathmore get relegated, you have to bring into your team the Kerry senior goalkeeper Shane Ryan, Paul Murphy, who was the Kerry senior captain last year for the final, and there was a couple of other options as well. And then again, Kilcummin have got relegated from Kerry this year. So unless I think Spar, who had a good few players in these Kerry team, they're in the intermediate. But if they don't win the intermediate, you basically will have got stronger again with Kilcummin next year. I think there's kind of a geographical divide in the division, and it has been trialled out before, I think at an underage, that there would be almost like 2 East Kerry teams. And I wonder, will that become suggested? Because it's just, I don't think this is the case in the division winning a couple of counties. I think it's the fact that all the players that they have underneath, and look, fair play to them, I mean, they have absolutely brilliant talent, but it's the age profile of it is what really strikes me. They're not really an old team. They have a lot of guys that we've seen win Kerry All-Ireland minor wins the last couple of years, and I think they got a scare in the quarterfinal. But like after that, I mean, just like even aside from Clifford, like there's other guys there like Darrell Roach, Clifford's brother Paulie, these are really, really good club players. Yeah, Darren Moynihan as well. Yeah, and just like the guys then that they've been able to bring in at the back. You've Jack Sherwood, a full back, who's obviously been Kerry senior the last couple of years. And like Mick Kerry just had no answer, like, and it probably was the outcome of the championship that was expected when maybe teams were assessing, or people were assessing the team the paper beforehand. Yeah,
and the fact that they could win their semi-final without too much fuss, without having David Clifford involved, that, like, it's a serious team. Where would you rank that David Clifford goal? Would you? When I watched it, I was thinking Michael Murphy 2012 All-Ireland against Mayo.
Yeah, I seen this kind of debate. I mean, it was a brilliant goal, but I do think there's an element that anything Clifford does is automatically kind of ranked incredibly high. I mean, sometimes I think maybe goals are kind of elevated for me in terms of the occasion and the kind of status. And I generally think probably the best one I saw him do live was the one in Clonus, when everything was on the line in that Super 8 goal. Just, obviously, look, I understand technique is a huge aspect to it, and like people are saying it's his weaker foot. He doesn't really have a weaker foot. Like, he's just so comfortable off both, and to get that amount of power off Sean Wright was obviously terrific. But like that goal in Clonus, I just thought it was absolutely brilliant for a guy in his first year. Like, the most hype of a footballer or a GA player in the minor ranks maybe since Joe Canning. Hard to think of too many that have been kind of so talked about, and to kind of stand up like that in his first year. But I mean, like this year, he gets red carded in the quarterfinal. He misses the semi-final. There's a lot of attention on him. Look, I think people are kind of aware that he's able to carry this expectation and kind of shoulder this kind of leadership role. And I think that kind of summed it up, the fact that he goes and produces something like that on the final when he's back into the equation. And I don't need the captaincy thing. There's some debate last year that he'd be a bit too young for it or it would bother him. I just think the way he plays it doesn't suggest to me that something like that will burden him. It does certain players. This rule that the county champions, that Kerry have, the county champions can nominate the captain, but I can't really see it being something that kind of weighs down on him and maybe impacts on his performances for Kerry going forward.
Over the weekend, and throughout this year, especially in football, maybe more so than hurling, there's been lots of new winners or teams that have ended a long famine or big champions knocked out, and I think nothing kind of typified that more than seeing Mountbellew Moylough beat Corofin. I think it's the first time that they've lost in the Galway Championship since 2012. They were 49 not out, and of course that brought to mind to me the Arsenal Invincible side. They were 49 not out, went to Old Trafford, and they lost their 50th game. Well, maybe not like with like, but it's the same thing again. A massive unbeaten run locally, and then to lose it on the 50th.
Incredible. And I mean, it's their first defeat in anything since Dr. Pokes beat them in 2017 in the All-Ireland semi-final in championship games. So I was actually looking at it. So it was 46 wins and 3 draws since they lost this county semi-final in September 2012. But the thing that was most interesting for me is Mountbellew Moylough beating them, because they've actually, in this time frame alone, they played them 8 times since 2014 in championship, lost 7 and drawn once, and they lost 3 county finals to them. And I mean, this year they've lost John Daly, who'd be, Galway senior footballer, to a knee injury, one of their better players. And I mean, everything suggested, we talked about it, I think the first day Corofin played this year, it was live on TV Cahir. It looked like the break had done them the world of good. They were still as strong as ever. Okay, they lost Kieran Fitzgerald to retirement, but they still had a lot of young players coming up. So I just think it's an incredible sign of resilience from Mountbellew. Someone tweeted me last night that it was actually the club's first time beating them since '74, and that they've had loads of defeats to Corofin go back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. So kind of for older club members, it's a kind of momentous achievement. Obviously, maybe there wasn't too many of them at the game. And then the thing is, I suppose it's like it would be some kick in the teeth now if they don't kind of go on and win the title. I mean, having worked so hard to finally beat Corofin and kind of suffered so much against them to kind of not finish it off. So you've only a week to kind of get around it. So I presume the big message will be just try and kind of reassess and all that. But it just strikes me probably the biggest one since when Crossmaglen were finally beaten in Armagh. Like Corfin's role had that kind of a run about it, especially because they were winning so many All-Irelands and all that. And they still had 12 of the team that started against Kilcoo in January, so it wasn't like they were massively weakened or anything like that. And I think that just kind of increases the significance in the feat for Mountbellew all the more, and you have to just give them a lot of credit.
Yeah,
and, no fluke, no narrow win. 7 points, get the goals in the second half. Finnerty got 6 points from play, so well deserved.
Yeah, and as far as I've seen this, down the stretch as well, they won something like 1-5 to a point, so they're very much on top. Mike Hullendale will meet Mountbellew Moylough in the final after beating Tuam Stars 3-14 to 1-15, and of course Tuam will be sickened too because they got so close last year to beating Corofin. They were leading in injury time the first day and obviously lost in a replay. But a question about Corofin.
I was thinking that I'd love to know, as in when they heard the news, or when they heard the news after they played their first game. And you're probably disappointed enough, and you've gone so close, and Corofin are your biggest rivals. You far preferred probably for their point of view to have seen Corofin win well, especially because I think they got level ending into the end. So it's probably a very novel final because not along Corofin, but you think Salt Hill, Killererin before, all the big champions over the last 2 decades. So it's a really, really different kind of a final pair, and probably one that was a bit unexpected at the start of the year.
A question for you. Let's say that the All-Ireland club doesn't go ahead this year. If Corofin come back and win the All-Ireland club title next year, you'd imagine they'll be back all guns blazing looking to do that. Technically, they'll have won 4 in a row because there wouldn't have been a club title this year. But the fact that they'd have been dethroned locally, would it put some sort of an asterisk on the 4 in a row?
I think it would a little bit, wouldn't it? I mean, it would have been different if they'd won the county in Galway and there had been no Connaughton or
like Ballyhale in the hurling. If Ballyhale win the hurling next year, you can't question the 3 in a row.
No, I don't think you can as much. No, yeah, I think it would be a little cloud. I think they'd probably maybe admit that themselves, But I mean, I definitely don't. They have such a kind of a strong players coming through. Age profile is pretty good. I mean, you have to salute them as well. What an incredible run they've been on. Not only winning 7 in a row in a county maybe that level of county success is probably not absolutely unheard of. It's just the way that what they've done beyond that, the way they've dominated Connacht and the way they've already dominated the All-Ireland series against a variety of teams. Like, they're still, I think, the greatest club side that I've seen. I would just have them over across McGlen. But yeah, I think that would be a slight thing hangover if they did manage to come back in terms of the record books and in terms of assessing it and all that.
Yeah, so big shock there in Galway with Mountbellew Moylough beating Corofin. But also in Louth, first time winner with Naomh Martins. They beat St Mary's of RD 113-19. I know a few people from Monaster Boys up there that are big fans of Naomh Martins. So Jocks for Joe finally. I was in college with lads 20 years ago who were all about Jocks for Joe back when they were stone useless, as they used to tell me. So congrats to them. In Fermanagh, Ederney beat Derrygonnelly. I think Derrygonnelly were looking for 6 in a row, and Ederney won their first title for 52 years, if I have that correct, so fair play to them. And then in New York, St Barnabas with a homegrown team over there in America beat Sligo 4-19 to 4-15 in the final. So as I was saying, plenty of shocks, new winners, that kind of stuff happening both here and across the water.
Yeah, well, they're 3 brilliant stories in turn there in terms of a first title in Louth. In terms of Fermanagh, you're ending a drought. You're kind of ticking all the boxes then with kind of spreading the game and the fact that the kind of homegrown element. I mean, this is something that like London have talked a lot about that they're trying to do, and kind of New York, that they want to try and move away. It's not a sustainable strategy to the kind of weak guys. The days of kind of flying in guys for the weekends and all that. Obviously, that wasn't going to be a runner this year anyway. So that's great to see. I saw Larry McCarthy, the GA president-elect, kind of tweeting about that and kind of pushing that over the weekend, so a huge achievement.
Yeah, and in Clare then, Kilmurray Bricken, they saw off Cratloe. Some of the scoring done there by Keelan Sexton. He scored 5 points. Noel Downs scored 2. Daniel Walsh came up with 2, and Mark Killeen got a goal. Actually, a note in that, Billy Sheehan, who of course played for Laois before and been involved in the coaching team with Cork alongside under Ronan McCarthy, he was looking to win a county title in 4 different counties at this stage. He was lining out with Cratloe this year, having done so with Cork, or in Cork with UCD in Dublin, and also Emo and Laois. So it came up a little bit short there, so unlucky for him. Did you? I don't know.
Yeah, the other one for there actually that I saw mentioned was the Killian Fair. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah,
he was playing for Cratloe, and then I think yesterday he coached it there in the Limerick Senior Football semi-final, and they're through to the final. So probably nice the way his weekend turned out after the disappointment on Saturday.
Yeah, brilliant Cavan final on over the weekend. Crosserlock drew with Kingscourt Stars 2-12 to 2-12, and as I was watching it afterwards, it almost seemed like the commentators were unsure, does this go to extra time or does it go to a replay, because they kind of said neither for a while. The players were hanging around the pitch, but that was a brilliant exhibition of football. And I think for counties like Cavan, who aren't normally seen, and everyone would just assume, sure, if you were from a different end of the country and you wouldn't really think about Cavan from one end of the year to the next, you'd be nearly thinking, that's probably poor enough fare. But it really was brilliant stuff.
Yeah, I only saw the highlights of it now, but really, really brilliant game. I think the background to it, it's no secret. I think RT were looking to show the Kerry final, but Kerry, like they did last year, decided not to get a televised live for different reasons this year. I suppose they're trying to get a bit of income through the live streaming. So that's why it wasn't available, and then the Cavan final kind of was broadcast. But it's great that it probably turned out well for them, because as you said, they're in the national spotlight. There's a wider audience than usual kind of looking at. Just interesting that it's the way it was kind of decided, and the kind of discrepancies when you think of the Trillick Dungannon thing. All that. I mean, look, the concept of penalty shootouts, I'm not opposed to it at all. I think it's a good idea with the kind of compressed season and all that, but I do accept there's probably an argument in a final. Maybe that the final should go to a replay, and I think it probably goes. Some players, look, I know every county makes their own decisions and they all have their own kind of systems for finishing championships, but the way that it's in play in some counties and not for others. I think the Down hurling final went to a replay, for example, this weekend. Maybe the schedule allows it. Maybe Tyrone were kind of pushing more to get their championship wrapped up and players back to the counties. But I think maybe if you're a Trillick player, I think maybe we should have got another go, because given it was a final and a replay, when you see what's happening kind of down the road in Cavan.
Yeah, hard to beat the drama though. In the Leitrim final, Mohill beat St Mary's of Kiltokert. Keith Burns scored 9 points there in a 14 points to 9 win. Westmeath, St Lomans and Tyrrell's Pass, so that finished 17 points to St Lomans. Tyrrell Pass 2-9, so St Lomans on top there. The Kildare final will be played out between Moorfield and Athy, because Sarsfields were knocked out there, so bit of a change there in Kildare this year. And in the Derry final, or semi-final, Marafelt will play Schlockneil, so that's the reigning champions against the previous champions. And Carol Kane was tweeting, seems almost certain that the Derry final will be held outside Celtic Park for the first time since '04, which happened to be Schlockneil's breakthrough year, looking likely that Balahi will host the game, which it now will. That's been confirmed since. And then just one further point, I'm not sure, I don't think we talked about it, but the Tipperary, the clash in the Tipperary ladies over the weekend. Cahir, they saw off Aherlow 6-17 to 220, but they'd given a walkover in the final of the Camogie, had Cahir, because they were expecting players to play 2 finals within 26 hours, and Ashley McCarthy had tweeted about it, given out, and eventually just the club took it out of their hands and said, player welfare, we're not going to make you line out twice. It is absolutely ridiculous at this stage of the game that the Camogie and ladies football can't come together for player welfare.
Yeah, well, look, this is a long running argument. I saw someone trying to make the point that, if Corofin won yesterday, Daithí Burke would have faced something similar this weekend. But I guess that's one player, and that's probably kind of his decision to be kind of involved with 2 clubs, and this is a kind of exceptional circumstances. But to kind of force one club down that road, especially when they were aware of it, that Cahir tried to kind of get ahead of the game, the players, they tried to kind of flag it. And I just don't think it stands up on a county board. I think it was the Camogie board were the ones that said the line, in our eyes, it's not a fixture, it's clash. I mean, look, in the strictest definition of the word, the clash is like if there's 2 games on at the same time. But surely everyone can see the problems and the kind of impact it would have when the games are on kind of Saturday and Sunday. And yeah, it's kind of very disappointing to see. I mean, the cooperation is just an issue. It continues to be an issue, and I think this is the problem for kind of ladies' that it's kind of getting the wider news and kind of wider coverage from kind of instances like this. I mean, I probably actually just I credit Corsi Rovers actually in Cork yesterday for that story. They won their first Cork Senior Camogie title, but one of their players, Fiona Keating, she scored a hat-trick, and a couple of weeks ago she'd scored 5 goals for the West Cork ladies team in the county senior ladies semi-final, and then they won the final. So I think she's only 18, 19. She was part of 2 big breakthroughs at the top end of ladies football in Camogie this year. But it seemed, looking at the fixtures there, that they would seem to be kind of on separate weekends, and that she wasn't kind of forced into a big massive fixture logjam like that. So I just think there needs to be maybe a bit of a look at the wider picture, because look, it's unbelievably unfair on players to be asking them to train when there's so much of a crossover, to be looking into something like that within 26 hours. I mean, if it was a men's clash like that, you can imagine the wider thing it would have got, and how that particular county board would have got absolutely pasted in Pillory if they'd been forcing players to go through that.